What's up, everyone? Mike here, hanging out on the mushroom farm. Great video for you guys today. So today what I'm going to talk about is selecting mushrooms to kind of grow throughout the year based on the season. Now, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do on my farm, kind of the experience I've had over the years. I've got almost a decade of experience growing mushrooms full-time, and I've gone year-round, so I've gone through the transitions of these seasons for quite some time now, and I've got a lot of experience doing these transitions. I kind of know what mushrooms work best at different times of the year. And keep in mind, I'm an indoor grower, but we still have to deal with the outside climate and just getting our indoor climate to be compatible with that, because we're doing some air exchange and stuff like that. So I'll just talk to you guys about what's best. This is the time of year that people kind of get seed catalogs. You know, if you're a vegetable gardener and you're going through your seed catalog, you're picking out your vegetables or your flowers that you kind of want to grow throughout the year, and you have a schedule that you need to follow a lot of times. So this is going to be just like that, but for mushrooms, okay? So that's what we're talking about today. I'm going to break it down: spring, summer, fall, and winter, and we're just kind of going to go down the line. I'm going to talk about the transitions between each season, the mushrooms that I like to choose, some problems that you may experience. I'm going to also talk about functional mushrooms like medicinal mushrooms, as well as gourmet edible mushrooms. So we're going to kind of cover it all as far as that's concerned. We're going to start with spring, so let's get to it.
Basically peach and cake.
Now, as far as springtime, it's kind of cooler. Remember, we're going to do the transition into summer. I don't grow shiitake on my farm, so that's not going to be on this list at all. But I like to grow oyster mushrooms, hericiums, maitake, king trumpets. We're going to talk about some of these medicinal ones a little bit. So anyway, oyster mushrooms, first of all, I would say oyster mushrooms are a great choice in the spring. Me, personally, I've had great experience with the blue oyster. My blue oyster that I grow is super aggressive, extremely high yielding. I actually grow my blue oyster year-round. It is a little finicky in the summer. We'll talk about that, but I will say, as far as oyster mushrooms, if you're trying to be like, hey, if you had to pick one oyster mushroom, Mike, to grow in the springtime, what would it be? Blue oyster. So I'd be going with blue oyster #1 in the springtime. You can do some of the other ones too. You can still do aspen, you can do pink, you can do gold, but blue, #1, okay? Hericiums. As far as the hericiums go, I mainly grow lion's mane, also coral tooth, the Hericium coralloides. I also grow bear's head, or Hericium americanum. And overall, hericiums work pretty good. They're a pretty wide temperature mushroom, and that's one reason why I really like them. It's one of my main mushrooms that I grow. Now, I will say, a lot of people know of lion's mane, though, okay?
There is a really wonderful, safe, and legal mushroom to use that leads to neurogenesis, and that's called lion's mane.
So if I had to pick one, I'll just say right off the bat, I'd say lion's mane. Boom, #1 for my springtime hericium that I would pick. But if you've got the market for it and you know how to sell them, coral tooth and bear's head are also amazing. Me, personally, I love to grow those. Now, the bear's head, we'll do a lot of that on the channel. I'm stoked to show you guys some bear's head videos. So I haven't done too much bear's head on the channel yet, but we're going to do a lot of that, so I'm going to educate you guys a lot on that. Same thing with coral tooth. We're going to be doing some in-depth coral tooth growing. I just want to say, any of you guys that are interested in these like kind of like wild hericiums or crazy looking hericiums, go for it, dude. When I first got into mushroom farming, the coralloides really caught my eye, and then another grower actually turned me on to the americanum. And I'll tell you what, once I presented those in front of my customers, you have to educate them about them, but just since they're so like wild looking and just gnarly, you know, looking like coral, they attract people to your farmer's market stand. If you show those to a chef, they will be like, wow, what is that? You know, they may know, but if not, they'll be asking what that is, and they want you to educate them, okay? A lot of times, once they try it too, they're gonna want it again. So get them educated, get them to try it, and then more than likely, you can keep growing these mushrooms and selling them then year round. But the hericiums, like I said, lion's mane, coral tooth, bear's head, phenomenal choices in the springtime and great year-round mushrooms, okay? The king trumpets, those are great choices in the spring, as well as black pearl king. I'll say if you choose to grow these, the early spring is a good time to do the king trumpet. Black pearl king is a little more resilient to the higher temperatures, and you can kind of do that in that transition to summer, but you may need to cut those mushrooms out when summertime comes, just because they don't do as well in the heat. If you have your grow room set up for it and your incubation area set up for it where you can keep it cool enough, then you could potentially incorporate those, but those mushrooms don't really like it above 70, okay? So keep that in mind for that transition into summer. Now, maitake does great in the springtime too. It's kind of comparable, I'd say, in the temperature range of the Black Pearl King, actually. They do really well in between like 60 to 70. So if you could kind of maintain that temperature range, you do really well with maitake. As far as other functional medicinal mushrooms like cordyceps and reishi, those are mushrooms that are great to do in the springtime. Both of those I like to do in vitro, in bags, or cordyceps in jars or trays. You've seen maybe other growers do that. We're going to do some of that here on the channel. I've got a lot of experience growing some cordyceps in jars, but I haven't really done too many trays, so we're going to play with that a little bit. But I will say, springtime is a great time to do both of those mushrooms. The reishi is a little more resilient to the higher temperatures, so you can do that going into summer. I will say, cordyceps, you got to keep it under 70. So just keep that in mind. If you can keep your climate control under 70 degrees, like in that 60 to 70 degree zone, without too much fluctuation, cordyceps will do good for you. But if you can't do that, then don't do cordyceps. All right, now on to summer, the hot time of the year. I will say, if you're a mushroom farmer, this is the time of the year that is kind of a pain in the butt.
You want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres.
So I am an anomaly nowadays being up here in elevation in the Rocky Mountains. Like, I'm going to tell you guys, in summertime, I'm going to have it easy compared to how I used to have it being in the Midwest. So I will say that's kind of a benefit for me being up here. And I'm going to do things slightly differently than I'm going to tell the vast majority of people. Because like I said, I am an anomaly up here. So you have to take everything into consideration. I will say, in general, if you're like a farmer's market seller, okay, or you're just dealing with hot temperatures, over 75 degrees, up in the 80s, the pink oyster, okay, if we're going to pick an oyster in the summertime, the pink oyster is like a powerhouse, man. Now, I will say the downside of pink oyster is it does have a low shelf life. You have to know how to control the mushroom too, because if you can time it right, it's a very fast to grow mushroom. You can utilize that to your advantage. But if you can't time it right, and then it's sitting in your refrigeration and you just can't sell it, it could potentially spoil on you and go bad. So that's kind of the downside to it. Keep that in mind with pink oyster. Gold oysters do really well in the summer, as well as aspen oysters. So you can incorporate them as well. They have a little bit longer shelf life. Keep in mind that golden oyster is a little more brittle, so it doesn't do too well in storage or just transport. You just got to be careful with the gold. The blue was like the king of springtime, okay? It's the king of springtime, it's the king of fall, it is the king of winter. But summer is when the blue tends to experience a little bit of problems. The blue, when it gets really hot, you can actually have a little bit of blotch. So be aware of the blue in your grow room. Watch out for blotch. Don't let it get too hot. Always inspect your mushrooms and kind of look out for it. But I'll say that's what you got to watch for in that blue in the summertime. Me personally, though, I've never cut it out. I always kept it in just because it was a high yielder, and it's kind of worth dealing with the problems. Hericiums. So once again, lion's mane, coral tooth, bear's head, they will rule the summer, man. Use those mushrooms. Most of them all can take the high temps. I haven't had any problems with it.
Basically peach and cake.
I do really well, I feel like, with bear's head. Bear's head tends to do really well with the summertime, no problem. I've never had problems with lion's mane, even the coral tooth. I do think the coral tooth does a little bit better in springtime and fall, but I still wouldn't cut it out. I still would grow it year-round throughout the summer. But hericiums, great choice in the summertime. Now, as far as the kings, oh boy. Now, these are the mushrooms you may need to cut out in the summertime, okay? King trumpet, black pearl king, neither one of those likes the high temperatures, whether it's in grow room, Incubation, Black Pearl King is definitely more forgiving, but just to get the Pleurotus Iringi, like the King Trumpet, to actually pin, you need to have some cooler temperatures. In the grow room itself, King Trumpets tend to do best in the 50-degree range, like in the 55-degree zone or so. So summertime, it's not super applicable. You may not be able to do the King Oyster on your farm in the summertime. I will be doing the King Oyster here in the summertime, just because, like I said, we have cool nights here still in the summer, and that's something I can use to my benefit. So for me, just because I'm an anomaly up here in the mountains, I will be growing King Trumpet throughout summer. Now, Maitake. Maitake is a great choice to kind of grow throughout summer. Like I said, if you can keep your temps in range, you need to keep it around that 70-degree zone in your fruiting room. They're a little more temperature resistant. You can get away with a little more stuff in incubation, but still, you need to keep incubation. I wouldn't exceed 75 just to be sure you don't have any contamination issues or anything like that. As far as functional medicinal mushrooms in summertime, cordyceps, reishi. Cordyceps, like I said, make sure your climate control is on point for those. Reishi, here's where reishi kind of stands out. Reishi can kind of tolerate a higher temp. I know guys like Myers mushrooms, I want to say he was growing them in like a shed or like his barn or something like that at 80-something degrees in vitro. So keep that in mind. I've personally grown reishi throughout the summer too without any issues. I haven't gone up in like the 80s or anything like that, but I've been nearby 80 for sure, like low 80s, but I've never hit like mid 80s or high 80s or anything like that in vitro with reishi. But I have kind of touched borderline 80. I will say they're going to be way more forgiving in the summertime instead of something like cordyceps. So keep that in mind. Fall. Okay, so we just got out of summertime. Like I said, summertime, if you're a mushroom farmer, a lot of time that's going to be your hardest time of year. Fall time, that's when like things start to get way better, way easier. It's like almost turning everything on easy mode now all of a sudden, okay?
No problemo.
So what are some of the mushrooms that are going to do great in the fall? Oyster mushrooms, always solid choice in the fall. All of them do great. Blue, pink, gold, aspen, kind of whatever you want to do as far as oyster mushrooms, send it, dude. Hericiums, same thing. Go for it, man. Like lion's mane, coral tooth, bear's head, they're all going to be great in the fall time. You can kind of even tell if you like walk through the woods in the fall, you're going to see things like lion's mane, oyster mushrooms. Maitake also, great choice in the fall time. Your king trumpets, okay? I'll say if you want to do king trumpets, only do them in the when you're going to have some cool temperatures. Your region is going to be specific to that, but like I said, you're going to have to kind of get ready for that transition into the cooler weather, and then you can incorporate those kings. But doing the kings like going into winter is really wise, so keep that in mind at the end of fall. Just like whenever your region is about to start experiencing some cooler temperatures, it might be wise to kind of start pre-staging some bags of kings, and that way you can time it for that cool time of year when they're going to perform right, and then that way you can be in full production for those kings during the winter months. Now, as far as our functional medicinal mushrooms, like I said, reishi is going to be bang on all the way throughout fall. Cordyceps are going to start to get easier because the temperatures are going to get a little bit cooler. Like I said, we don't want to go over 70, and the temperatures start to stabilize like a little more towards the end of fall. So towards the end of fall, you can get away with a whole lot more if you want to grow some cordyceps, but otherwise, like I said, if you want to do cordyceps, just make sure you're keeping it under 70, and you'll be good to go. Winter, okay, so this is the next time of year that we're all dealing with. Some people don't even grow throughout the winter, but for those of you that do, okay, and I'm a guy, I do like to grow throughout the winter, and I am, even though we're gonna have some cold weather or cold winters here in the Rocky Mountains, and a lot of places do, a lot of businesses do shut down or really like limit what's going on in the wintertime here. I'm still gonna grow, but I'm gonna limit what I'm doing, and we're just gonna kind of play it by ears. Now, honestly, it's a cold time of year, so you want to pick mushrooms that are gonna do well in the cold. Always remember, because it is cold, stuff just slows down. So your growth is going to be a little bit slower. Do what you can to heat up your grow rooms, but you are going to be battling the climate like no matter what.
But the other thing is, it's a catch-23 situation.
Just because when it's colder, the air's dry, you got to heat it up, okay, but then you got to add moisture to it. So you're like having this constant battle of drying out the air, but you're still trying to add moisture to it, and you got to keep it warm enough, so it's tricky. So do what you can in the winter, work with it, but keep in mind things are going to go a little bit slower. So pick the mushrooms, like I said, that you can to work with you to your advantage. Blue oyster, okay, solid choice in the winter. It grows really well. It still pins in those cold weather months. So I'll say blue is a great choice. Golds, they don't like it as much, but you can get away with it if you're not super cold in your grow room. Aspens, I've had my aspens actually growing in my grow room when it's been in the low 50s, so you can get away with some aspen oysters. Pinks are like, no way, dude. So don't even think about growing pinks unless you can have your grow room above 60, and I wouldn't even consider it, but I try to grow pinks only if my grow room is 65 plus, and that's when I have my best results with the pink oyster mushroom. So I cut the pinks out in the wintertime. Hericiums in the winter. Lion's mane, coral tooth, bear's head. Solid choices. Just keep in mind they're going to go a little bit slower than normal. I had some coral tooth and some lion's mane both in my grow room here in Colorado growing in the 40s. So they grew in the 40s, but they just grow super slow. I don't really like to do them that cold, but sometimes you got to deal with it. They do best really in like the 60 degree zone, but you can still grow great mushrooms when you're in the cold temps with hericiums. Like I said, it's just a little bit slower. Kings, okay, so Black Pearl King, Pleurotus syringae, or King Trumpet. Those are going to be great choices throughout the winter months on your mushroom farm. Those are like some of my favorites to do. Just because maybe you can't do them in the summertime, that might be a good reason to do them in the wintertime. A lot of your chefs might be interested in that. They might want to do a switch. Maybe some of your customers are just going to like it. Me personally, like the texture on like a King Trumpet is just phenomenal. So anytime you can get a chance to grow those, I would recommend doing it. So Black Pearl King or King Trumpet, wintertime, solid choice. Maitake, okay, another solid choice in the wintertime. Now the winter time of year is a great time of year to be working on your functional or medicinal mushrooms. Cordyceps and reishi. Okay, so reishi will go a little bit slower in the wintertime. Cordyceps, though, that's a pretty good time to be growing cordyceps because most of you guys and everyone can kind of keep it in that zone, the 60 to 70 degree zone. A little bit easier in the wintertime. A lot of times that's a little bit easier to maintain. So maybe you can grow yourself like a bumper crop of cordyceps, dehydrated or whatever, and then you can preserve it for springtime for sales or summertime or just, you know, consumption for yourself. But winter is a great time if you want to do cordyceps or reishi, anything like that. So that's kind of how I like to do things year-round, spring all the way through winter, and the kind of mushrooms I like to select and grow on my farm. I'm just doing a lot of planning right now with my new growing season coming up, and there's some things on my mind. And if you guys have any questions about what I went over today, just drop it down below in the comments section. If you've been like looking at seed catalogs or just like thinking about your upcoming growing season, tell me down below in the comments section like what's on your mind. But that's really all I got for you on this one. Hopefully you guys all found that helpful and informative. If you did, please drop this video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That's all I got for you on this one, and I will catch you guys on the next one.